Okay. First of all, I want to give thanks to Pascual, the University, VLC Photonics, in order to invite me to do this presentation here. I'm not going to go into very detailed photonic integration activities due to, at the end of the day, from Orange, okay, we have an R&D division that is working closely with manufacturing on these topics. But I'm going to try in this presentation to give you some flavors about what are real use cases where we are using photonics in order to solve issues. Okay, first thing that I want to highlight is that when you speak on fiber, the first thing that you have in mind is regarding the volume and the speed. But there is a third pillar that for us is even more basics. In a world where the IPTV and the video is 80% of the information that we are carrying on the network, that it is the latency. From time to time, nobody is thinking in that, but from my point of view, I think it's something that you need to take in care, even more than volume and speed, that actually can be handled by other means. So, okay, based on those three pillars, I'm going to try to put some examples of how we are managing or why we need a connection, high-speed connections and fiber optics connections in order to solve some of those use cases. In the area of the volume, I'm going to highlight about the challenge on IPv6, that it is something that is happening today. I have been working in IPv6 since many years ago in order to solve the issue with IP outage. But behind IPv6, there is a challenge also that is to combine both technologies, IPv4 and IPv6. So we will see later why optical communication should help, and it's a leverage in order to do this period, to do working both platforms together. Also for IPTV is a challenge because at the end of the day we are moving a lot of information, and as I mentioned before, data latency is something critical. So we need both the volume first, but also the low latency in order to be able to transmit and to be able to offer the service in a good quality. And last but not least, we have the big data topics. At the end of the day, big data is something that we are starting to put in place in Orange. And when we are speaking on big data, we are speaking to move very huge amount of data first, not impacting the operational systems, because at the end of the day, we are not able to gather this information impacting the customer experience. And after, we have a very, very reduced time in order to do this movement, this movement data information. Actually, and we will see later, we are trying, for example, for IPTV, taking logs, it's 5 minutes. So we need to move around 30 gigabits, it's 5 minutes, and to process it. So there is very tight time in order to do that. Okay, and last but not least, the latency with the IPTV example that we were speaking before. So I'm going to move quickly on those use cases. Afterwards, if there is any question or if there is any other use case you want to discuss, we can do it also. So for IPv6, as I mentioned before, when we are speaking of IPTV, the people is starting to think in the outage and the issue we have with IPv4 IP addresses in order to explore a new world that it is the Internet of Things world. But what is behind is not to do the movement that at the end of the day is quite typical and maybe easy problem to solve. But what it is behind, and the real challenge is to combine, to converge IPv4 networks and IPv6 networks. So why this is a challenge? So this is a challenge because at the end of the day, if you have a look at the home network has a very high speed today with fiber to the home that we are giving to actually 300, 500 megabits per second, and we will do it for next year on more than 1 gigabit per second, so this is not an issue. But what happens when an IPv4 application, for example, you're a smart TV, that is something that you have at home, 2 years old. I mean, it's not something quite old. It is working in IPv4. It is not compatible in IPv6, and you need to transport this information into an IPv6 network. So you have a look how to install this at network level is to introduce a new equipment that it is what it is here that we call CGNAT, and the CGNAT is in charge to do this protocol conversion. I mean, we are tunneling all the information that it comes from home devices working in IPv4 to one single point of contact that it is the GCNAT who is going to transform this protocol communication into a IPv6 workflow and send it to the end. And this is the worst case because, for example, if you have a look at the new services that we have today, Netflix, for example, Netflix is working in IPv4 and IPv6 from technical perspective. The service is working in both technologies, but as I mentioned before, the customer devices are not IPv6 ready. So we need to concentrate all the IPTV traffics coming from over-the-tops like Netflix, for example, or even YouTube, to one single point of contact at network level, and afterwards to forward it to them. So this introduced real challenge, not only in the amount of traffic that we are managing today, also in the latency, because if this we got congestion in those nodes, is going to generate issues, but also in the data transportation and single point of failure. So this is the first example that I want to put on the table, that optical communications is key because this CGNAT cluster is working everything on 10 gigabytes interfaces and are generating a lot of extra cost in terms of moving on the IPv6 project, that it is not, for me, it's some kind of hidden cost when you are speaking on this kind of projects. Oops, sorry. Second point second use case that I want to mention to use regarding the big data. When we are speaking, you know that big data is starting to explode today because at the end of the day we have the capabilities, and those capabilities, is coming from software most of the time, but also from optical communication. What it is behind is the capability to have to convert in finite information, something that 5 years ago was we were not able to manage, or was infinite. And for doing that, we are working in many use cases today at Orange, but one of the use cases, maybe the key use cases that we are trying to deal with is, we have a very huge mobile network with 15 million subscribers here locally in Spain, and around, I think, 15,000 base stations. So all of those base stations and all subscribers, customer base is generating what we call the control plane and the user plane signaling at network level in the mobile network. So what we are trying to do is to store all this control plane in a local database. It's in the cloud based on big data technologies and trying to guess what it is happening at the network level. I mean, when actually that is really difficult to know, for example, when a call drops. But what we are trying to do with those models is I'm going to record all signaling. I'm going to try to predict why the calls will be dropped and where the call will be dropped. So in such a case, I can't react quickly and I can't optimize my investments, for example. For doing that, what we are doing today is we have the network proofs at network level that are distributed around the country. So we need the first challenge that is to do, let's say, port mirroring about what is happening in the network in order to duplicate the flow to be stored in our local database. So first challenge that we are using optical communication matrix to do that is to do this port mirroring. So we are not going to interfere what is happening at an operational level. We are going to copy those flows. We are going to organize those flows. We are going to transmit those flows in a dedicated network, that it is a network for services, that it should be increased, or we need to increase the capacity of those services that regularly was designed to making backups, and now they are moving a lot of information in order to store this information in the big data platform. And afterward, we have what we call the mediation layer. The mediation layer, what it is doing is taking all the streams that are coming from all the proofs, generating one single stream structure. I mean, they are discarding what it is not useful. They are ordering and putting the right way the information. They are correlating the information that are coming, because when the service starts, there is not only one record in order to manage the activity of the customer, so we need to correlate all of them, and afterwards we need to include this information in the big data platform to be able to apply different models and the predictive models to know the customer experience. So this is, for me, another example. And when you speak on big data, you are thinking in complex algorithms to calculate or to do some kind of machine learning in order to know what is going to happen. But what is behind is also a technical communication, because, actually we are moving 30 terabytes per day on this kind of information. That it is a very huge volume. So the other use case that I want to put on the table is the APTP, in the ATP issues, and this is a real case that we faced 1 year and a half ago around the football, all the football matches, because APTP was there in such a date. You know that in Spain football matches was managed mainly by Canal Plus. And Canal Plus was distributing the signal by satellite, but at that time, Telefónica and Movistar spoke to Canal Plus and would take the rights of football match distribution. And the regulation was saying, football matches for everybody, so all telco companies should be able to offer a football match offer. And this happens at the end of July, you imagine, just starting summer. We start to distribute over APTP or over our APTP network the football channels all weekends and on Wednesday and so on. This generates a really traffic explosion because let's say the CDN, the content delivery network, were starting to manage more than 10 times more traffic that was managing before, and the main concern is that we are managing this traffic not in an average, in regular conditions distributed around the day, but just only from 4 to 5 in the afternoon on Saturday, that it is when the football match is. So this was a real challenge also from technical perspective. First of all, due to the increase of the capacity of all the links on all the network, the core network transport layer, in order to manage this information. So we need to duplicate all the POPs in order to distribute the signal to every customer in proper conditions. And in parallel, we need also to modify the way that we are transmitting this information. So we move from a point-to-point communication to multicast communication for some live events in order to optimize the amount of traffic that we are distributing for such kind of events. And last but not least is a clear example of what is happening today in 4G, and it will come in 5G networks, I think, in a couple of years, that it is regarding how to manage all mobile data traffic growth that we are having in the mobile networks. So I put some examples and some graphics from different vendors and different analyses. Are a little bit quite old, but indeed it's good to see that it has been confirmed that okay, 2-3 years ago when we were speaking on this point, from time to time people were saying, okay, but this is not reality, but actually it's real. So what we are seeing is that, okay, and the mobile traffic is exploding. At the end of the day, in some cases we're speaking in 20 times more than 5 years ago. And even more, we are pushing or we are accelerating this movement because, you know, we were managing, let's say, very slow mobile communication, but 4G introduced a very revolutionary aspects, and actually we are offering more than 100 megabits per second in the mobile handset, but even we are having experience with more than 1 gigabit per second due to carrier aggregations, and it will be even more with the 5G. And let's say we are lucky because, for example, for Orange, Valencia is one of the cities that we are doing trials. So at the end of the day, this is a reality. If you have a device with carrier aggregation capabilities, you are able to take this kind of speeds on your handsets. So when we do that, and okay, I put just only for information what are the different links and the different signalings that we are managing on the mobile network. What we are discovering that the backhaul is something critical. I mean, when you are trying to give this such a speed at customer in the hands of the customer, you need two things: that you need to modify the radio, but the radio is only one part that you need to do it. Afterwards, when you have the signal, let's say local on the base station, you need to move this, you need to route this information to the core network. And for doing that, you need also the optical communications. It's what we are calling a fiber to the node, to the base station. This is one point, but the second point is that actually the 4G and the 5G network is managing, has been designed much to be much more reliable to failures. So actually we moved to a classical distribution where the base stations were only coordinated by a central single node, to something a little bit different, where the different base stations are able to speak each other in order to handling communication, or to handle the communication from one to another, even without notification the central or the core network components, because okay, they are trying to put first to keep the communication on, and afterwards to do this notification to the core in order to localize the mobile and so on. That in the other way, I mean, to ask first to the core for handovering, and afterwards to do it in place in order to get better quality of service. And for do that, we need a lot of gigabit links. Indeed, actually, we are trying to manage all the links at network level, starting from 10 gigabits links for backhauling, and moving for 100 gigabit links for the core network. And this was not happening if optical communication was not there. And that's all. That are the different use cases that I want to show to you. I don't know if there is any question, or you want to enter in more details of one of them. I'm able to give you more information if needed.
Now it's time for questions. Is there any question?
Thanks for your talk. So I want to ask you maybe a bit general question. What is the strategy of Orange towards putting fiber to the customers? Is it more fiber to the home directly, or fiber to the building and then distributing it with coaxial cable, or?
Obviously, it's fiber to the home.
Fiber to the home.
Yeah, that is not used. Indeed, we are rolling out fiber to the home since 5-6 years. We bought just 2 years ago. Main driver to do this operation is just to have the fiber network that Gestel was rolling out. And we are working together even with Vodafone, for example, to reach the customer home. And there is, okay, we have coaxial also, but in a very limited areas, because with some agreements that we already have with Vodafone Ono, we are taking profit on the Ono network, but it is pure marginal. I mean, it's just only to get the benefit of the network that it is there, but we are not rolling out any kind of coaxial. It's pure fiber.
And what is the speed that you think will be coming in the next, I don't know, 5 years to the end user? Is it reaching like 1 gigabit per second?
Indeed, 1 gigabit per second is reality. I mean, we don't need to wait 5 years to have 1 gigabit per second. So we have already tested in the lab by the end of last year, and this is something that will come. I don't know when, but maybe this year or next year. I mean, in 1 year from now. The question for me is not the speed. The question for me is what the customer is going to do with this speed. Actually, from my point of view, there is no real application that it is justifying this kind of speeds. I mean, it's much more a marketing campaign than that there is a real need to bring 1 gigabit per second to the hands of the customers. If you have a look at what the IoTs, for example, is doing today, that seems that are exploding on this world. Most of the use cases, okay, just only the video vigilant use case is justifying, let's say, a lot of bandwidth or a little bit more bandwidth. But for the other use cases regarding sensors like biometrics, temperature, pressure, whatever, we need a very, very small bandwidth. It is even more critical what I tried to highlight about the latency, that the bandwidth that we need itself. So for me, in order to, I think we are capable to do even more than 1 gigabit per second, but we need to find first the driver or the disruption that justify to give more than 1 gigabit per second to the customer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? No? Yes?
Thank you for your talk. And one question that I had is, and linking to the previous question, is that you are thinking on maximum 1 gig on fiber to the user. But on mobile terminals, what is the speed that you are looking for? Or you think a mobile terminal will, at the end, have for a user? What do you think a user needs in their mobile phones? Because at the end, on fiber, I guess that you also want to take this to the radio stations and link to mobile terminals. And my question is regarding in that link, what do you think would be the speed in wireless?
In wireless, we are reaching today, and we have demonstrated, and I think in the next Barcelona World Congress that it will happen at the beginning of March, we will target 1.5 gigabit per second. Because with carrier aggregation, let's say, it's so easy to increase the capacity and the speed, because at the end of the day, the only thing that we need to do is to aggregate the different carriers and to have a what we call virtual frequency in order to manage the bandwidth. But again, for me, the challenge is not, okay, in the mobile it's a little bit different, because at the end of the day we are in a share in a distribution that it is shared by many customers. And from time to time, it's not only an issue to provide the bandwidth to the base station, but it depends also about what the other customers of the cell is doing. But on top of that, again, I'm coming back to the answer of the previous question, is much more a challenge to discover what it is what is the service that needs more than 1 gigabit per second in the device? Because actually, if you imagine, for example, the Blu-ray, if you want to put a very high definition streaming on the mobile, it doesn't matter if it is the mobile or the fixed one, you need around, I'm speaking in memory, but I think it's 25 megabits per second bit rate video, between 25 or 30 megabits per second video due to, okay, nominal speed in Blu-rays, bit rates is 50 megabits per second, but afterwards you need to put all codings information, so the bit rate is reduced. And for 25 megabits per second is something that we can provide it right now. I mean, it's far away from 1 gigabit per second, so you can't imagine to multiply this by 2, 3, 4 multi-sites, because you have many devices and you want to do it, you are at home and you want to stream in your iPad, your mobile, and many devices sometimes. But even still thinking in that, you are far away of 1 gigabit per second. So this is why for me it's quite difficult to know what it's going to be behind. And this is something that we were, from Orange, we were putting this issue on the table many years ago. Even now the fiber is live, but 5 years ago in the R&D labs we were speaking on that, what kind of activities we need to promote in order to create this need. And to be honest, I never find the question today. I never have the answer, sorry, today. So, okay, just to close the question, and I don't know if it's a real answer that we're looking for, is 1.5 gigabit per second. It can be a reality in the time frame of 2-3 years. This is not a very big deal, but again, the challenge is the use cases that will support that. Because if not, the customer is not going to pay.
Thank you. Time for maybe last question. If not, we'll move to the next speaker. Okay, thank you. Let's thank the speaker. Okay, next speaker is Sebastián Pantoja from Televes. Yes. Tienes aquí abajo un puntero que la gente no sé por qué no está usando, ¿vale? Un punterito que se usa. Y tienes que mover con flechas de espacio y tienes que hablar aquí. Para que sí se ve.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. I think for us is we are very glad to be here, because we would like to, well, as Pascual and Ruben were asking to me for this talk, is just to talk about what we are doing in Televes and possible applications for photonic integrated circuits. Okay, so I would like also to mention that I tried to balance, which is giving an answer to the question that Pascual and Ruben were doing, and also these are public information, so I need to balance these two fields. So I hope you can understand this situation. Okay. So here, as well, Televes is not so well known like Orange. And also I'm going to talk about a more niche market, okay, so not so huge like my colleague from Orange. So the telcos are talking about a higher impact market, and I will going to talk about a more niche market, okay. And then I think it's important to give you a brief overview of what Televes is. Very brief and soft, I promise, but just you to have an idea of so which is the size of the things we are going to talk about. Okay. So as I mentioned, this global overview. So Televes was created in '58. So we are around 730 people around the world. We sell in more than 130 countries, and we have a year investment of 60 million. And this investment is because we are a factory, so we manufacture what we are doing. So we need to invest in our facility in order to be able to manufacture from Europe, okay, and not to move to other maybe low-cost geographies. And also, I would like to give you an idea that we are a corporation, so we are 21 companies. And, well, why we are so many companies? Well, when we were created back in the year 58, we were in the north, well, we are in the north-west of Spain. So this is a location where it's not easy, the communication 20, 30 years ago were not so easy. And then it was mandatory to make a vertical integration of all the possible or the critical operations so we can deliver with the right quality and timing to our customers. This because we have companies inside the corporation that are doing PCB manufacturing, so we manufacture our own PCBs for us and for the world, let's say. And on top of that, we have companies that are specialized, like ISF. Sorry, like ISF, that is specialized in process automation. So as you can understand, we are manufacturing here in West Europe. We are 720 people, and we have around 100 robots in our manufacturing lines. And this company is working on the automatization of all the processes. And then we have other companies, well, Laretel, well, sorry. Oh. And Laretel here is specialized in doing CE marking, certification, and this type of things. That's something that we also need in the past. And we have then more specialized companies for broadcasting, but for IP distribution. So that's this is the approach that Televés was following. So we make companies. Many of them are commercial filials only. And the other ones are specialized in integrating vertical operations or moving to other markets that Televés want to explore, like, for example, IP and TV broadcast, okay, for example. But as I mentioned before, we have a global presence through our 13 filials. We are in all around the world. And basically, all of them are, let's say, commercial filials. But in Portugal, we have also a facility, so we are manufacturing also in Portugal. It was also the first filial that we have in Televés. And in the Far East, we also have a purchasing department there in order to get also components from Asia. Okay. As I was mentioning before, we want to, our target is to create value in Europe, but not only designing and creating, but also in manufacturing. So that's, for us, is mandatory, and this because our lines are automated, as I was mentioning before. And very quickly, so we are in a very competitive market. Sorry, I forgot to mention, I apologize, that we are focused on TV distribution. Okay, so in the building, we are specialized in getting the signal from the satellite, terrestrial, cable networks, and distribute these signals to the home. So the products that we have are from the antenna till the sockets that you have at your home, even the cable, the coaxial cable, set-top boxes, okay, head-end equipments, distribution. So that's the type of components we are doing. And this is a niche market, as I was mentioned before, because everything is moving from the telcos to IP, and they are getting almost all the spectrum. More and more spectrum is moving to the telcos. And that means that we need to provide very competitive solution. And that is just an example of a component that we developed. It is in gallium arsenide. And this we are using in our antennas. Is a low LNA from 400 megahertz to 2.5 gigahertz, which is usually the bandwidth that we manage in our products. And as I mentioned before, it was designed here in Televes and was manufactured in Wien, which, by the way, is a 3500 that now is developing a new process based on indium phosphide. Sorry. And we designed it. The foundry, yeah, we are not integrating the foundry, okay, that's sure. It's manufactured by Win, but we develop all the process to put it in our boards. So it's manufactured in Televes. Okay, so we are able to place chip scale package in a PCB. And well, that's as I was mentioning before, is just to give you an overview of the market we are addressing. As I say, it's a niche market for radio frequency signals distribution. Okay, and now you will see the components that we already have that we are selling today. For which type of networks? Okay, so here is the very common one. So we have cable operators, and what we are in DOCSIS networks. What we are doing is to do all the passive components, taking all this signal to the building or to the home, and then inside the home do the distribution by in this case, by coaxial cable or by Wi-Fi, so inside the home. And this is the other approach, which is more as a GPON solution, which basically the approach is similar. But the only difference, the other one we were providing the set-top boxes, and here we are providing the ONTs. Okay. So, having in mind that we are targeting these two type of networks, which with components, this is the passive components, and that currently we have. We have pigtailing. This is something that we were buying from the Far East. But we decided that from a service point of view, and because we need to move from coaxial cable to fiber optics, that's clear for us. It was important for us to have some capabilities of doing internally pigtailing. So that's something that we are doing because our customers want to have different sizes depending on the network they are going to install. And this is a service that we can provide. So it's not only we are not going to compete in price, of course, that's impossible in this market, but we are able to provide a solution to our customers. At the same time, we have fiber optic sockets that there are some cable operators like R or medium-sized cable companies that they are interested in this type of solutions, and we are providing that to them. And of course, all the splitting and fiber optics cabling for distribution. For the active components, you will see that it's not really challenging, but here the challenge is the cost. It's a market that I will mention before is, in this case, is cost-driven. And here basically is an optical link for direct modulation. You see that the frequency is not very high, but this is the requirement for the satellite. The maximum is 2.1. Here we have external modulation, but the frequency is the same. Here the only difference is that we have, mainly in South America, we have deployments where the challenge is the distance. So in the other solutions where you are talking about 5 kilometers in this range is something that you can do it very cost effective with this solution. But if you want to move to 15, 20 kilometers or in this range, you will need to move to external modulations. Okay. Another component that is very important for us is optical amplifiers, mainly for GPON networks. So this is with 8 outputs, but for higher, bigger networks, we are working in this with 32 outputs. And that's for us a very interesting market because many people need it, okay, of course. And it's something that also the cost